inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
My guest on the podcast today got interested in the idea of passive income and generating rental income that he could live off. So he went out there, he educated himself, he took time to find great deals, and he built a portfolio of cash flowing rental properties that he thought should generate enough income to support him and his family. But pretty quickly, he realized that he wasn't making the kind of money he had projected. The properties had a ton of problems, and they were going to need a lot of money to fix up and to keep going. So a lot of people might feel really discouraged at this point, and they may have given up, but my guest didn't. He crunched some numbers, and he figured out that half of his properties were generating the majority of his problems. So he sold off the problem properties. He kept the good ones. He focused on making them better and running those properties better. And for the last 30 years, those good properties that he kept have been supporting him and his family. So I want to figure out exactly how he did this and what he's doing. So let's take a really quick break. We'll thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll meet Rich Hudec from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. The first step in buying a rental property is to get pre-qualified. And I would suggest you work with a lender that specializes in working with investors, because the last thing you want to have happen is to get to closing and find out the money's not there and you can't close. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender and she'll pre-qualify you for free if you mention Rental Income Podcast. Find out more today. Contact Chaley at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. Are you looking for actionable steps to create wealth and passive income? As a top-ranked business and investing podcast with over 800 five-star reviews, the Passive Real Estate Investing Show is packed with strategies and insight for putting money in your pocket. Marco Santarelli from Narada Real Estate Investments brings his expertise and knowledge on both passive and turnkey real estate investing, and he provides listeners with helpful tools and tips to create the wealth you've always wanted. Head over to iTunes or Google Play today and subscribe to Passive Real Estate Investing Podcast, or visit PassiveRealEstateInvesting.com. That's PassiveRealEstateInvesting.com. Hey, Rich, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Let's start at the very beginning. What got you first interested in the idea of investing in rental properties?
Well, my family and I signed up for a Robert Allen wealth training in '89. And after that course, we got enthused about buying real estate. We had never really thought about buying real estate before that. We did have a rental property that kind of came into our family kind of a roundabout way, but we never really thought of being full-time investors. And after we took that training, we were so enthused, and we had the skill set to do the repairs, and we thought the market was good, so we decided to start buying.
Awesome. So Robert Allen is a real estate trainer, but this was just a general wealth training course. It wasn't necessarily all about real estate?
It was about half real estate, and the other half was personal development. We realized that especially when you're getting started in the real estate business, it helps to have some personal skills. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the willingness to go out and talk to people about buying property when you've never done it before, or borrowing money when you don't have any assets, you need to have a lot of personal charisma or power, and we kind of got some of that from the course.
After you finished that course, how long did it take you to actually go out there and find your first property?
It was really only a couple of months. We had a realtor friend who showed us some properties, and we found a 6-unit building in a decent neighborhood. And we made a slightly under market offer, and it was accepted. And we used conventional bank financing, although we were able to, for the down payment, use equity in our farm to buy the property. So it wasn't a nothing down deal. And we were happy for it, happy for the deal. And it only took a couple of months, I'd say.
And that deal seemed to go pretty well at first. I mean, you got tenants in there, and was that deal, would you say, kind of a good start?
It was. The building was occupied, but needed a lot of updating.
Okay.
And I would say it was positive cash flow from the beginning. Any property we looked at, we had to have positive cash flow from the beginning. We couldn't afford to put a lot of money into it or to let it sit empty for a long period of time. So while it wouldn't have been a great cash flow, it was positive from day one.
You knew from the very beginning that cash flow was your goal. Like you were never thinking, I'm going to buy for appreciation. Like you knew that you wanted that cash flow.
Yes, in the Johnstown area, there certainly is some appreciation, but we could never really count on that. And we were at a point in our lives where we needed additional cash flow. So not only did we have to buy properties that were under market, we had to also do the repairs ourselves and have positive cash flow to, partially live on. So it was kind of a tight squeeze to do, but that was our strategy from the beginning.
Today, you support your family off the rental income. Was that your plan going into it? Did you know that was going to happen, or did you kind of pencil some numbers out that, well, if we have this many units, we'll be able to support ourselves?
I don't think we ever looked that far ahead in terms of being able to support ourselves. We were operating a family farm at the time, so we had an additional source of income, but also an additional source of work as well. Mm-hmm. So we kind of thought if we did this to supplement our income, and it would be a good retirement option, if not for me, then for my parents. Right. So it seemed like a good plan to go into. But, we were very enthused at the time. We wanted to buy a bunch of properties. I don't think we ever thought that we needed a certain number to make a living.
After that first 6-unit property, did you start getting more aggressive with purchasing? Because you eventually got up to 38 units. Or 38 doors. Did you, I guess, get kind of aggressive after things went well with that first purchase?
Sure, we did. I think anyone that goes to a nothing down seminar or a real estate seminar gets really enthused about the possibility of buying properties and making a fortune and living on the beach somewhere. But and I think we got caught up in that a bit, at least for the first year or two. It's easy to buy properties in our area. They're not terribly expensive. So we bought really more than we should have, and we kind of underestimated the amount of work it took to get them up and running, and then the management work after that. So we were very enthused.
So what happened? So you got to 38 doors, and then one day did you just think this is just way too much work? Were you like, what have we gotten ourselves into?
Sure. I guess it was kind of a slow process. We bought properties, as I said, that were fixer-uppers. So we had to do the work ourselves, which we could handle. But as we got more and more places, we didn't realize how much additional work would be coming in month after month. We did not have the cash to really fix up a property as it should be right away. We had to do the bare minimum to get somebody into the apartment so we could get cash flow, and then we had to move on to another place. As a result, a month or two later, a repair would come up, and it was tough for us to get back to that. We didn't have a good screening system in place either, so we had some troublesome tenants that would tear up the apartments or not pay the rent, and that just compounded the problem.
So now things are kind of blowing up, it sounds like, that that everything was going smooth, but now all of a sudden you seem to have created a bunch of headache for yourself. Is that fair to say?
Sure, absolutely. We had, several vacancies at the same time. Months would go by and we couldn't get back to the apartments to get them renovated, or we had people not paying and we couldn't get them out. It wasn't all bad, certainly, but a few of the properties we had were really underperforming, and we were going backward. We just weren't able to pay our utility bills easily or tax bills, and for a long time it was a real struggle.
Yeah. So then what did you do? Did you just wake up one day and say, well, we've got to do something? This isn't working out. This is just way too stressful, way too much going on. How did you get out of that situation?
Yeah, we had some heart-to-heart conversations within our family about what we wanted to do and how we wanted to tackle it. And we had to sit down with a spreadsheet and really look at where the money was going and say to ourselves, we're going to have to increase the rent here, or we're going to have to try to sell some properties. And it was tough to do because it was in a way kind of admitting defeat and taking an additional step backward to regroup before moving forward.
Right.
But ultimately, those are the things we had to do. We gave a property away. We tore a property down. We sold a couple properties for under market, and then we raised some rents. And over time, we started to crawl out of that.
Right.
We also thought that we would have all of our properties paid off at a certain point, and we realized around that same time that we'd actually have to go back in and refinance and get a lower interest rate and actually borrow some additional money, which turned out to be a good decision. But at the time, it was tough to do because it kind of some of those original plans we had weren't coming to fruition.
Right. Now, you said you gave a property away. Do you mean like you got foreclosed on, or like what does that mean?
No, we actually sold it to a tenant who was living in the property.
Okay.
We didn't have any expectation that they were going to actually pay for the property. And while we held the first mortgage, we never foreclosed on them. And we were just more than happy to let it go.
Okay.
There was much too much deferred maintenance, and we were out from under it. We became really don't-wanters with several of our properties very quickly.
So how many properties did you end up getting rid of?
I think it was about 4.
Okay.
If I believe. The big issue for us was a 9-unit building that we bought. And this building had an awful lot of deferred maintenance. It was across town and had some management issues as well. And we really got underwater with that property quickly. And the state actually came in and really required us to do tens of thousands of dollars of safety upgrades to the building. And that was a really dark day when that happened. But less than a month later, the neighbor across the street offered to buy the property for what we had into it.
Okay.
So we got out of it, and that was an enormous help to us.
Sure.
And that's one of those things that you really can't count on happening. And, we would have done it differently now if we had to do it all over again.
Right.
But that kind of bailed us out as well.
So you had 38 doors before you started getting rid of properties. How many doors did you end up with by the time you had kind of cleared things out a bit?
Probably about 20.
Okay. So what happened then? Like when you got rid of all the problem properties, what was your portfolio looking like at that point?
We had properties in decent neighborhoods, a couple in poorer neighborhoods, but ones that were rented out and that were performing. We didn't have an awful lot of deferred maintenance. And we kind of looked at which properties would require the least amount of investment, and we kept those.
Okay.
We definitely kept the single-family homes in better areas. And I think ultimately we made sort of triage decisions. We knew that there were some properties that were just really troublesome for us, and we just got rid of those and kept the rest.
All right. So looking back, if you were to do things differently, if you could go back in time and redo everything, do you think that some of the purchases you maybe wouldn't have made at the beginning were properties that maybe weren't in the best neighborhoods and properties that needed too much work?
I think that each of the deals we made were good deals in and of themselves. But I think when you add them all together, it was too much for us.
Okay.
There was a couple that I think we may have overpaid a little bit for them. But all in all, I believe we paid fair prices for our properties.
Mm-hmm. But it was just,
we would have.
So it was just the volume of properties. It wasn't necessarily that they were in bad areas or they needed too much of your time. It was just you had too much on your plate.
Right.
Okay.
Too much on the plate. Absolutely.
Okay. So now what is life like now with 20 doors? Like that you definitely, I mean, you cut your portfolio in half, but what are things like today?
Much better, much better. We put a premium on having a good quality of life as defined by very little chaos and drama. Mm-hmm. And we want to have an easy management lifestyle with our properties. We do all of our own work. So we do put a couple of hours a day in on the properties, but we don't have any 8 or 10 hour days. We don't have any days where we have to go and do a particular job. We can set our own schedule. Mm-hmm. And that's very important. We'd rather have fewer properties, but have a good quality of life than have more properties and a lot of headaches.
Now, you've owned this portfolio for quite a long time now. Do you have everything paid off?
No, we have a small mortgage. We're not really interested in paying it off because we find that the interest rate we can earn on additional real estate investments is greater than the interest we're paying the bank.
Okay.
So it doesn't make much sense to put that extra cash into the bank to pay off the loan.
Right. You know, it's interesting that 20 doors is the number that you found. And this is what you do, right? Like that You don't have another job, like the rentals is what supports your family today?
Yeah, pretty much. We have a couple of other passive forms of income, but primarily we are real estate investors.
Okay.
That's what we live off of daily.
I love that 20 is the number you're at, because I've always thought that 20 doors is kind of the magic number for a portfolio, because 20 isn't too much to manage. And I really think you can live a pretty good life with 20 rentals. So do you
Sure.
agree?
Especially if you do your own work.
Yeah, yeah. So do you want to buy any more properties, or are you just comfortable where you're at today?
No, we're still looking. We bought one near the end of 2017, which was a tax sale property, and we're continuing to look at a couple others.
Okay.
Now we are interested in hiring the work to be done, however. We'd rather get less cash flow each month in exchange for not taking on the additional work. We don't want to get back into the same bind that we were many years ago, but with additional cash to be able to invest, we don't need to worry about doing all the work ourselves.
Right. So what do you think? Like, if you add maybe another 10 properties that are all cash flowing pretty good, do you think 10 properties would be enough to be able to outsource more? Like the extra cash flow that 10 properties or 10 doors would bring in?
We've never been into having a specific number. There were days that I would have loved to have one property or zero properties.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, I probably wanted 100 properties. But the number of properties that are right is the number that it takes for you to have the lifestyle you want to have and to accomplish your goals with real estate. It's not about having more than the next real estate investor in the room.
Now, tell me about the way that you buy properties. 'Cause I love that when you buy a property that needs a lot of work, you're not going in there and putting a whole bunch of money into the property right off the bat. You kind of rehab the property slowly. Walk me through how that works.
Sure. We're looking at a 3-unit right now that needs a lot of cosmetic work. It's been vacant for a while. So we would go in and do all the work needed in one apartment only and do nothing in the other 2 apartments. We would get somebody into that apartment and then over time finish the work in the other 2 apartments. That gets some positive cash flow going. If we have some setback and need to go do a different job, then we can know that the property is at least breaking even.
Okay, so you're gonna buy the property and you're gonna do the rehab over several years. So you might upgrade just the bare minimum at first, like for the first year or the first tenant. And then when that tenant moves out, then you'll put some more money into fixing it up and bringing it to the next level?
Right, absolutely. We'd add some additional wood trim, perhaps the next tenant through, or additional light fixtures or cabinets. We always try to leave a place a little bit better after somebody moves out and we've rehabbed it before we put a new tenant in. And that way, even if we're not increasing the rent, we can at least demand a better quality tenant. Higher standards.
Yep. Now, speaking of tenants, you've done an incredible job of keeping one of your tenants for a really long time. You have a tenant that's been with you for 20 years. What's the secret to keeping a tenant for 20 years?
Probably nothing more than not increasing the rent on them. It's probably simple as that. We have some people that don't, they're older folks now, of course, and they don't really want to look for another place. It's a hassle to move. And we feel that it's better to leave the rent lower and not have the turnover and have that solid person in the building rather than trying to raise the rent on them, forcing them to move out, and maybe going back into that 1 or 2 or 3 year turnover cycle where we have to rehab the apartment. So we have a few of them like that are 20 plus years. And, we're just going to leave them there as long as they want to stay.
Have you ever raised the rent on that unit?
Very modest increases when the utilities change or garbage collection gets transferred into our name. We would do very minor increases, but those apartments are definitely under market.
Okay.
And they're nicely maintained and we have no trouble from them at all.
Well, if that tenant ever does leave you, I'm sure you're going to get a nice payday when you're able to raise that rent back up to market rate. At some point.
I would not be happy to see them go, but I certainly wouldn't be disappointed either.
Absolutely. Well, Rich, tell us about your landlord association. You run a landlord association in Johnstown. Tell me about what you guys do and how someone could find out more and maybe meet up with you guys if they're in the area?
Sure. In 2005, several of us founded the Greater Johnstown Landlord Association. It's for landlords and property managers in the area. And we've met every month since then. We've been very active in our community, resisting ordinances and regulations that come about. We've also provided great learning opportunities for our members to be more effective and profitable business owners and property managers. And anyone would be welcome to either join or come by for one of our meetings. Johnstown seems to be a popular area for out-of-town investors, especially recently. So I want them to know that if someone's interested in buying in our area, we're a resource that they can rely upon.
Yeah, and that's really good having that local resource. When we were talking before we recorded, you were telling me about a turnkey company that came in town and kind of took advantage of a lot of people. What happened?
Yeah. Over the past couple of years, there's been a turnkey business operating in the community, and they probably bought maybe 200 properties and resold them to out-of-town investors at what I would consider to be inflated prices. For a long time, I was hoping everything would work out because they were offering management services to these out-of-town investors. But in recent months, it seems that they have essentially ended operations here and operated in a highly unethical manner and left a lot of investors out of the area with no management and no rent coming in.
Yeah, that's
too
bad.
That's discouraging.
Yeah.
The opportunities are certainly here, but in that case, they did not act ethically.
Yeah, you got to be really careful with turnkey companies. Like, there's some really good ones out there, and then there's some really bad ones out there. But yeah, definitely, if you're going to go turnkey, definitely do your due diligence.
Just call a realtor or call a landlord association in the area, or make a visit to the area if you're going to tie up tens of thousands. Buy a plane ticket and find out exactly what you're buying.
Yeah. So what's your website if someone wants to track you down online?
It would be gjlandlords.com.
If you missed that or you want to look it up later on, I'll go ahead and put a link to Rich's website on my website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 218. I'd like to thank today's sponsors for making this episode possible. If you are looking to buy a rental property and you need financing, the lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and she specializes in helping investors buy rental properties. She's got a bunch of different loan programs, and she can definitely help you buy a rental property. You can find out more and get started today at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE, lendinggroup.com. And if you mention Rental Income Podcast, she will waive all of the pre-qualification fees. NMLS 42056. I'd like to thank AutoSlash for sponsoring today's episode. In preparing to record this commercial, I thought it would be interesting to compare AutoSlash's rates with some of the other rates on some of the other big car rental websites. And so what I did is I made up a reservation for 1 month from today to book a rental car in my town, just a small compact car. And here are the results that came back. So Kayak and Hotwire both came in at $255 for the week. Expedia came in at $225, and AutoSlash was the winner, the low price car rental at $211.48. Every time that I've checked AutoSlash, every time that I've compared AutoSlash to any other discount that I could find online, AutoSlash has always won. They save their average user 30% off the best available rate that they can find on any other car rental website. It's a great site. It's totally free. The way it works is AutoSlash searches the internet. It finds every available promo code, every available discount, and it makes sure that you're getting the lowest rate possible when you book a car rental. Check it out. It's autoslash.com. That's AUTOSLASH, autoslash.com. Thank you so much for listening. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe. We've got new interviews every single Tuesday. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.